Just weeks ago, rebel forces in Ethiopia were on the offensive, taking territory, sounding bullish and confident. Some even predicted on this programme that they could, should they wish, march into the capital Addis Ababa. Sure, why not, as one spokesman for the Tigrayan forces put it to us. Now, though, the picture is very different. Those same forces have announced an almost complete pullback to the northern province of Tigray itself. A strategic withdrawal, their leaders are calling it, in the hope, they say, there'll now be a comprehensive ceasefire and full peace talks. The federal government under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed have another view altogether. Tigrayan forces are, they say, on the run. This is not a managed retreat. It is, in fact, a rout. We'll get an expert outside assessment in a moment, but first let's hear from one of the major players. He's Tsadkan Gebretensie, former Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian National Defence Force, now a member of the Central Command of the rebels, of the Tigray Defence Forces. How is he seeing this very changed battlefield?
The bulk of our forces are inside the constitutionally recognized part of Tigray. There could be some forces still traveling to Tigray or some forces posted for security purposes, but the bulk of our forces are inside Tigray. Mind you, we have taken this political decision and the withdrawal operation at a time when the whole of Western Tigray is under the occupation of Eritrea and Ethiopian allied Ethiopian forces. Some forces of Isaias are still in some parts of northern Tigray. Their commanders are planning operations in Addis Ababa. Their mechanized experts are commanding Ethiopian mechanized units. So we have decided to withdraw, and we have withdrawn the bulk of our forces into Tigray on the consideration that we want to give peace a chance.
You say that this was a political decision, this move back into Tigray of pretty much all your forces. There have been lots of reports that actually what has driven you back has been the military successes of your opponents, in particular the use of combat drones against your stretched supply lines into Amhara and Afar and down the road towards Addis Ababa. That has been a big part of the reason why you have withdrawn forces, isn't it?
I would not say it was not a factor, but that is not the only factor. When we marched to Addis Ababa, the political and diplomatic arrangements did not go in tandem with our military progress. The diplomatic and the arrangements were not in place. And it was a factor that we had to consider, especially when we have a very long supply line, supplying a huge army, and our trucks are moving either for supplies or reinforcements. Those were an easy target for the drones. So the drones had an effect on our supply line.
There are forces opposed to you who are currently in Western Tigray, that you also say that there are members of the Eritrean army in northern Tigray. Why did you not concentrate your efforts there? Were you guilty of perhaps being a bit too ambitious in trying to march all the way to Addis Ababa?
No, I think it has to be clear from the outset that there was no intention to march into Addis Ababa. We were ambitious in the sense that we wanted to finish the war as soon as possible. In our thinking, march for the south and at the same time bringing the political coalition as possible, pressurizing the Ethiopian government for an all-inclusive, negotiated political settlement, we thought would be the shortest path to bring an end to the predicament which we are in.
You've talked many times about your desire for there to be an all-inclusive political dialogue. How far do you accept that the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front has a feared reputation in much of Ethiopia because of its 30 years in power, and also, more recently, because of the documented human rights abuses that fighters in your name, fighters with the Tigrayan Defence Forces, have carried out and that have been documented by human rights groups? Summary executions, rapes, and other possible war crimes have been carried out by Tigrayan rebel forces in Amhara and Afar. Do you accept that that means that as far as a lot of the Ethiopian population is concerned, the TPLF is to be feared and it is to be defeated?
The war that is being waged in Tigray is a war of resistance by the people of Tigray. The Human Rights Commission in Geneva have decided to put an expert group to inquire into the human rights abuses all over Ethiopia, including human rights abuses that has been done allegedly by the fighters in Tigray. We have welcomed it. You are asking me about what the TDF forces have done inside Amhara and Afar. But the atrocities that has been committed in Tigray are much worse, if at all there is any atrocities committed in Afar and Amhara. The atrocities that has been committed in Tigray, both by Ethiopian forces and by external forces, forces of Eritrea, is huge and appalling. So the only thing that I can say is what has been decided on Geneva is the first right step. Let an independent inquiry go into the process, bring the facts together, to the surface, and then that will be the basis for any judgment.
That was Tsadkan Gebretensie, Chief of Staff former Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian National Defence Forces, now with the Tigrayan Defence Forces. Alex Rondos is a former European Union Special Envoy to the Horn of Africa. What does, in particular, the use of drones and the involvement of outside powers say about the Ethiopian conflict?
It's catastrophic in its implications. In effect, we run the risk of having a Syria or a Libya in the middle of Eastern Africa, in a country of 100 million people. Suddenly, whoever began this conflict, this famous police operation, has turned it into something that is potentially an ethnic civil war that is now being weaponized by foreign powers in Ethiopia. Once you begin that, you don't pull out fast. I think this is one of the most dangerous things that could have occurred, and an act of